sharing a story, an article that I read on Money Sense last week. It's a story about a couple named Dennis and Charlene Brown. And the article discusses their efforts to try and figure out why they rarely have any money at the end of the month to stash into a savings account or put into an RESP for their two daughters. I won't read the whole story to you, but I will say this. After I read the article, and it was fascinating, I was a little stumped too. See, Dennis is 40, Charlene's 36. They live in a suburb of Calgary. Dennis used to be a truck driver. And after his eldest daughter was born, he was assigned another long-haul drive up into northern British Columbia, and he'd had enough. So he quit his job, went back to school, studied to be a welder so that he could spend more time at home with his family. Charlene shares his kids' first philosophy. She operates two Montessori schools, one in her suburb of Calgary and another one in nearby High River. Like most middle-class couples with young children, Dennis and Charlene spend their days in a blur of activity. They rise early, grab breakfast with their two daughters, Emma, who's 8, and Abby, who's 7. Then they rush out the door, drop their kids off at school, get to work. A few hours later, they scurry back home again, make dinner, and take their daughters to skating lessons or violin lessons or karate classes or whatever it is that they do. Together, Dennis and Charlene earn slightly more than the average Canadian family. And they try to be really smart with their money. They pay off their credit cards every month. They own just a single vehicle, a 2001 GMC pickup truck that Charlene drives to work. 4 years ago, they bought a house for $230,000, took out a 20-year mortgage, and they've accelerated their payments so that they can have their home paid off in about 14 years. If Dennis keeps his welding job and students keep enrolling at Charlene's schools, things should work out just fine. But Dennis and Charlene don't feel as though they have it made. Far from it. Whenever they look at their bills at the end of the month, they realize that they're skating on the brink of catastrophe. They have no savings to fall back on should something go wrong. They have no RRSPs or RESPs to cash in down the road. A while back, Charlene tried to set aside 10% of their earnings into a separate account, but she ended up having to put that money back into the regular account to pay bills. She worries constantly about her family's lack of a financial buffer. So, what are Dennis and Charlene doing wrong? If you listen to many commentators, their problem is a simple lack of self-discipline. A selfish desire to have everything at once. There was a headline in the Vancouver Sun recently that read, "Overspending rampant among young." And the Montreal Gazette ran a similar headline, "We are a nation of overspenders." A study commissioned by Mackenzie Investments deplored the tendency of Canadians under 50 to spend without thinking about their financial future. And economists moan about the declining savings rate. While Canadians put away nearly 20 cents of every dollar they earned in the 80s, today, according to their study, we save less than 3 cents out of every dollar we make. The conventional wisdom adds up to a stinging indictment of today's spendthrift middle class. And it sounds convincing until you talk to people like Dennis and Charlene. They and their two daughters shop at a local discount supermarket, so Food Basics instead of Zehrs, and they get by on less than $500 a month in groceries. They rarely eat out. While Charlene says she would love to take the kids to Disney World, so far, all of their vacations have been to visit family in British Columbia. "There's nothing fancy in our household," she says. "The family's only indulgence is a single television set, a 42-inch floor model that they bought for half price." But Dennis refuses to spring for cable access because he would rather his daughters read books than watch TV. The simple fact is that Dennis and Charlene are doing nothing wrong. They make a bit more than average, they spend wisely, and yet they just barely manage to make ends meet. And the writer of the article suggests that there are millions of middle-class families across the country in exactly the same position. Their paychecks show they're making decent money, but their bank accounts are practically empty. Dennis and Charlene are the first to acknowledge that a family needs two incomes in today's economy. When Dennis quit his job as a trucker, times were tough. Charlene's single paycheck had to support the entire family. Dennis says, we did everything we could to stay afloat. We ate Kraft dinner for 3 years. And if a recession continues and one of them were to lose their job, he says that they'll probably be eating Kraft dinner again. Does that sound familiar? And there are elements in their story that certainly ring true in my own household. The article goes on for another 10 pages or so, and I won't share any more of it with you this morning. But if you're interested, you can read it online. They're going to throw the link up on the screen. It was supposed to be in the home church insert, but we had some copying problems, and so that insert has been emailed to all the home church leaders. You can get it from there as well. So it's a good incentive to go to home church this week, or you can check it out online at our website as well. So what do we do? I mean, I'm not a financial expert by any means, which my brother will attest to, and my wife too. If I'm lucky, I can add my way out of a wet paper bag. And if you're anything like me, you're probably asking yourself the question now, okay, Greg, then why are you on the stage talking on a week when we're talking about money? But I'm not going to talk to you today as a financial planner would, or as a banking advisor would. I'm just going to talk to you about me, what I do, and the research that I did while I was preparing for today's talk, and what I found in the Bible about money. And then I'll get Grant up here and he can give us some of his professional advice. He is a financial planner. I have 3 basic thoughts I want to share with you this morning. And I'll begin by repeating what I said earlier. I'm no expert, but these 3 things just seemed like common sense to me. And even if they just serve as a reminder as to how we're supposed to treat money, and not some sort of groundbreaking financial magic, then I think we'll have spent our time wisely this morning. So here's the first thing. When it comes to money, you need to have a plan. And notice I didn't say budget. If you're anything like me, your budgets are like New Year's resolutions. I'm really committed to sticking it to the budget for 2 weeks. And then I'm mostly committed to sticking to the budget for 2 weeks. And then I really try to stick to the budget for about another week. And then I find myself saying things like, what budget? And then I look at my bank statement and I say, oh, we really need a budget and we need to stick to it this time. And of course the whole thing starts again. There's something very attractive though about being able to stick to a budget. There must be bragging rights or something. It's got to be like, sticking to a diet all winter and all spring and working out so that you can show off your 6-pack in the summertime. But a line-by-line budget or a bit of software to help me budget won't work for me. But it might work for you. I have a colleague who does what her dad did. She gets the cash, the literal paper money from her paycheck every 2 weeks, and she stuffs it into envelopes. One marked rent, one marked groceries, one marked utilities, and so on. It works for her, it worked for her dad. I know that would not work for me. I'd end up stealing from one envelope to put into another envelope, or end up just putting it in my own pocket. My plan is much simpler than that. It's basically just an awareness chart. Helps me understand or see where my money's coming from and where it's going. I have a chart that tracks my family's income. You can see it on the screen there. Basically, I list my income and my expenses. I write down what I spent last month, because I can see it in my bank statement or from the sheet I filled out for last month. And I put in the budget column what I expect to spend this month. At the end of the month, I write in what I actually spent and I note the difference.